First up on the agenda today is Senate File, that's weird, 1750. And we have a pinch hitter this morning, so I will move that Senate File 1750 be laid over for possible inclusion. And so before us today is Representative Ray Rauer. And so welcome to the committee. If you'd just like to introduce the bill, and then we will call it testify. Oh, wait, you have a DE9 amendment. I will move the DE9 amendment. Representative Ray Rauer, can you tell us about the amendment, please?
Yeah, thank you so much, Madam Chair. Is it okay if I just do the introduction at the same time?
Absolutely.
Great.
Thank you.
I am filling in for Representative Kristen Bonner this morning, who was called away to, has to be in her other committee meeting. So today, 82% of new homes entering the marketplace are in an HOA, with nearly 1 in 4 Minnesotans living in an HOA. As CICs and HOAs increase nationally and here at home, our laws have not kept pace. Red and blue states acknowledge a greater need for basic guardrails around transparency, best practice, and consumer protections. Legislators in this room know it is one of our most frequent constituent concerns and one of the hardest to remedy, as Minnesota statute offers little, if any, relief. The bill before you is the culmination of a 1.5-year deep dive that began with a work group to tackle thorny issues and passionate public listening sessions. Since that time, the bill has received robust review by a wide array of stakeholders and has seen significant revisions. It passed the Senate with a bipartisan supermajority, and the current DE9 fixes lingering concerns from the Senate floor. It reflects intense negotiations, compromise, and has returned stronger. With the chair's permission, we wish to move the DE9 amendment.
Thank you, Representative Ray Rauer. I will move the DE9 amendment to get the bill in the shape the author would like. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion prevails. All right, so with that, thank you, Representative Ray Rauer. Anything else to add, or should we move to testifiers?
We can move to testifiers. Thank you.
So first up on the list is Ron Elwood, followed by Joel Carlson. We are going to try and keep 2 minutes. And so I will announce on decks after Mr. Elwood comes up.
So we're on 1750. You're presenting today.
Welcome to the committee, Mr. Elwood. If you could just state your name for the record and proceed with your testimony. And I apologize to inform you of the pinch hitter this morning.
Thank you, Chair Cagle, Chair O'Driscoll. First, I'd like to thank Representative Ray Rauer for pinch hitting today. Legal Aid is here today to testify in support of Senate File 1750. The DE9 has come a long way to address the feedback from the authors, Representative Bonner and Representative Mecklin, have heard throughout this process. And I know they are more than willing to continue the dialogue with stakeholders who in good faith are interested in addressing the concerns you all have heard throughout the years about HOAs. I also want to express my deep appreciation to the Minnesota State Bar Association, and particularly Tom Bray, who is the chair of the MCIWA subcommittee of the real estate section of the bar. Mr. Bray has spent a substantial amount of time and shared his vast experience to provide thoughtful and constructive feedback, both technically and substantively, to this bill. And a considerable number of the changes reflected in today's DE9 are a result of Mr. Bray's analysis. The bill is better for his involvement. Members, this is a homeowner and consumer protection bill. Yes, HOA boards are made up of homeowners who volunteer to run, but according to one property management website, 75% of HOAs are run by management companies who are not elected by the homeowners. The complaints that legislators have received over the years were so great, that you formed a task force to look at reforms. That task force heard hundreds of angry homeowners tell stories of outrage about abuse and conflicts of interest by HOAs and management companies, and large and ever-escalating attorney's fees that place their homes in jeopardy. I will share just one story from legal aid. We represented an elderly homeowner who was assessed a hefty sum for alleged damage she caused to her unit. She insisted that it was the prior homeowner who caused the damage and she was not liable for the assessment. Our attorney found the evidence to sustain our client's story and sent that to the HOA's attorney. We got a letter back saying, yes, you're right, we are withdrawing the assessment. Here's our fee for $400. So members, thank you for hearing this bill, and ultimately I hope this committee will support the vital reforms contained in Senate File 1750. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Joel Carlson on, and then on deck, Matt Greenstein.
Good morning.
Welcome to the committee. If you could just state your name for the record and proceed with your testimony.
Madam Chair, if Mr. Greenstein wants to come up, I think
On Zoom?
we'd be ready to go with him right after me, so.
Oh, okay.
Madam Chair, members, my name is Joel Carlson. I own a legal research and government affairs business, and I represent the law firm of Greenstein and Sellers, and by extension, their clients, which include homeowners, homeowner associations, management companies, people that are involved in the management and living in common interest communities. And you have an exceedingly complicated issue in front of you right now. We have spent a lot of time, as Mr. Elwood noted, trying to reach resolution, and we are not there, and quite frankly, we're far from being there with a number of the components in this bill. The bill has three major problems from a property owner's standpoint. Number one, it will increase every homeowner's costs. The requirements of this bill, whether it's dispute resolution, limitations on what you can do to collect the money that's owed to all of your other owners that are delinquent in their payments, to a myriad of problems, this will increase costs for every single homeowner and in a way that we don't think has any corresponding benefit. The reason it does that is this bill has a one-size-fits-all approach for every CIC in Minnesota. You're going to hear from the ombudsman, and I read his report. There are about 1.5 million Minnesotans living in these properties. And a $25 fine for a $40,000, or late fee for a $40,000 unit maybe makes sense. And homeowners get to decide that among themselves. A $25 late fee for a $14 million unit in downtown Minneapolis doesn't make much sense. That's the last bill I'm going to pay. And that just pushes the cost for non-compliant owners onto everyone else. This bill, and all 54 pages of it, has all kinds of examples where it just forces the costs onto other property owners. And the last thing I'll point out, Madam Chair and members, this isn't a tenant's rights situation. The people that live here own this property. They have vested property rights. This bill and its retroactive nature takes away the property rights that I purchased, whether it's what I signed up for how parking's going to be handled in my HOA, or how we're going to handle disputes, or how we're going to handle late fees. This changes the benefit of the bargain that I purchased when I bought into the HOA that I'm residing in. And that is fundamentally unfair. It changes our contract rights, which I think is a violation of our constitutional right to impair my contracts. It has a myriad of problems. This bill needs much greater vetting by both the legal community, management companies, homeowners. I agree with Mr. Elwood that you heard from hundreds of angry homeowners, and some of their stories are exceedingly compelling. But you heard one side from hundreds of angry homeowners. There's a flip side to every single one of these situations. And to have the legislature step in and regulate all of those individual disputes among homeowners is just going to be, create a myriad of problems that I hope we don't go down this path until we can reach consensus, and we're not there yet. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you. Up next is Matt Greenstein, followed by Jenny Sanford. Welcome to the committee, Mr. Greenstein. If you could just state your name for the record and proceed with your testimony.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Matt Greenstein. I'm the managing partner at the law firm of Greenstein Sellers. I've been practicing in the area of representation of common interest communities and homeowners in common interest communities almost exclusively for 16 years. I'd say I've a lot of experience regarding these issues that have been raised through the HOA task force and that have been raised throughout the legislative process. When I meet with communities at town halls, annual meetings, special meetings, a lot of that conversation is always tackling difficult problems. Communities are facing substantial increases in the cost of insurance, special assessments for deferred maintenance, and are constantly struggling to fund and maintain the property. The associations have a legal obligation to make sure that these services are provided for all homeowners and that the legal obligations under the Minnesota Common Interest Ownership Act and their declarations are complied with. When I head into these meetings, a lot of times there's a lot of concern. Like constituents for legislators, homeowners have varying opinions, sometimes very strong opinions on what should be happening. And my job as counsel is always to explain how the governance process works, that we're all in it together. It's a community. Not everyone might like the outcome. Not everyone might agree with the outcome, but we have to respect that process, that self-governance process that allows homeowners to choose how they want their community to operate. I'd agree with Mr. Elwood's comments that there is the need for better transparency, better education, better ways to allow homeowners to participate in that self-governance process. And we've provided language and suggestions, some of which that have been incorporated to achieve those goals. But what's left in the bill and what we still have concerns with is the other language that doesn't achieve these goals, that interferes with that self-governance process, that impacts homeowners' property rights and the rights that they purchased when they purchased a property within their community. Even the DE9 still contains substantial language that we're concerned will increase costs for homeowners. Homeowners are every year facing increased assessments for insurance and other costs, and now there's additional obligations that are going to increase the cost for management, increase the time for board members to meet their fiduciary duties that already exist under law. It's going to impose limitations on the ability to contract the options available for communities. It's going to impose arbitrary caps and structures on the ability of the association to incentivize timely payments, which are necessary in order to fund all these legal obligations. I believe other people will be testifying here today about the financial strain that is on most communities in the state of Minnesota. A big concern is also the language that incentivizes disputes. While we want to have a process where it's transparent and homeowners can provide feedback, we can't have a process where one decision can be questioned indefinitely for years, taking away time, energy, and resources from more important matters. It wouldn't be fair if this committee made a decision on a bill and then 3 years later, every time the committee meets, there's still somebody who wants to testify about a past decision. There has to be a governance process to allow communities to make decisions and move forward without constant dispute. If you go through the language, almost the entirety of the language about homeowners' rights uses words like dispute, contest, demand hearings. And while some of that is appropriate and some of that already exists under the statute, what we're left with is a process where it will be chaos and there'll be an inability for associations to operate in an efficient manner.
And my my 2-minute timer went off a while ago, so if you could please wrap up your testimony, I'd appreciate it.
So I will wrap up briefly. I know there's also a corrective amendment on this bill or on this statute that's over 200 pages just to make corrective amendments. My concern is moving forward without properly vetting this bill, cleaning up some of these issues. What we're going to be left with is something that the legislators having to clean up for years and years because of the the lack of understanding about these operational concerns. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. All right, next up, Jenny Sanford, followed by Roxanne Kimball. Welcome to the committee. If you could just state your name for the record and proceed with your testimony.
Yeah, my name is Jenny Sanford. Thank you, Chair Cagle, for giving me the opportunity to speak today. My name is Jenny Sanford, and I'm the Director of Community Engagement at Twin Cities Habitat for Humanity. I lead a dedicated team that supports homeowners who've purchased homes with Habitat through the 7-county metro area. Our team's goal is to help homeowners develop essential financial management and home maintenance skills, as well as foster community building so they can thrive in their homes. My team receives calls on anything from water in the basement to people being ready to sell their homes. And by far and away, the calls related to HOAs are the most difficult to resolve. Habitat has developed over 1,500 homes since the year 2000, and 625 of them, or nearly 42%, are in HOAs. There are 65 different HOAs represented in this cross-section, each with its own unique set of governing documents outlining board functions and community rules. Communities elect boards to interpret and apply rules and regulations, but when the processes break down, homeowners often come back to Habitat for assistance. Issues with HOAs are not rare. In the past 6 months, my team has dealt with challenges in 19 of those 65 HOAs in the last 6 months alone. And the challenges are broad. Unexplained fees, lack of transparency, challenges communicating with management companies, foreclosures, and even a desire to disband the HOA altogether. When homeowners call us with concerns, Habitat does what it can to educate and assist with navigating the complexities of governance, but the support and resources we can provide are not enough when the system is flawed. When we invest in affordable housing, we want homeowners to be set up for long-term success. We need the HOA ecosystem in our state to function and provide a supportive environment where families can thrive. It's disheartening for all parties when the HOA conditions undermine that goal. And we support the changes to this bill so that HOAs across the state can succeed. Thank you.
You were right on 2 minutes. Roxanne Kimball, followed by Finn Jacobson. Welcome to the committee. If you could just state your name for the record and proceed with your testimony.
Chair Cagle, Chair O'Driscoll, and members of the Commerce Committee, thank you for the opportunity to testify. My name is Roxanne Young Kimball. I'm the President and CEO of the Minnesota Homeownership Center and a member of the legislature's HOA Working Group. I'm here today to speak in strong support of SF 1750, which directly addresses the consumer protection gaps in Minnesota's HOA statutes. Minnesota has more than 8,000 HOAs affecting over a quarter of our state's households. Many HOAs function well and support some of the most affordable homeownership housing options in our state. However, some homeowners routinely face issues that, if they were occurring in any other consumer environment, would trigger immediate oversight. Here's one example shared from a foreclosure advisor in Washington County that is illustrative of the need for this legislation. A homeowner correctly submitted paperwork for automatic HOA dues payments. The property management company failed to process it, and the first notice that the homeowner received was a pre-foreclosure letter followed by $3,600 in attorney's fees, charged simply for asking for a statement on the account. Foreclosure advisors we support see similar patterns across the state. Under current law, homeowners have no guarantee of an informal, no-cost dispute process to resolve this sort of issue, no protection against attorney fee escalation, and no requirement that payments be applied to assessments first. Another issue squarely in this committee's jurisdiction is market fairness. During the working group, multiple homeowners testified that property management companies were steering contracts to affiliated businesses, bypassing competitive bidding and inflating costs for entire communities. Cases were repeatedly cited for manipulating approvals and self-dealing, and highlighted in a March 2025 Minnesota Reformer news article. The Delete All Amendment directly addresses these consumer harms by establishing conflict of interest rules for property managers and boards, requiring competitive bidding for significant contracts, requiring clear, no-cost dispute resolution before charges escalate, and creating reasonable limits on fines and late fees. Giving homeowners more rights and protections for which they have been clamoring. These reforms do not undermine well-run HOAs, they support them, ensuring that communities run smoothly and that homeowners are treated fairly and consistently. SF 1750 as amended is a balanced set of reforms that promote fairness, reduce questionable practices, and bring Minnesota in line with many states that have enacted similar reforms. I urge your support for SF 1750. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Up next, Finn Jacobson, followed by Brock Cohen. Welcome to the committee. If you could just state your name for the record and proceed with your testimony.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My name is Finn Jacobson. I'm an attorney and partner at SJJ Law, a law firm in Bloomington that represents thousands of homeowner associations across Minnesota and the upper Midwest. We work on a regular basis with common interest communities, both large and small, urban and rural, working with volunteer board members, community managers, lenders, insurers, and homeowners to try to keep their communities solvent, safe, and functioning. I want to be very clear at the outset. SF 1750 as currently drafted will increase the cost of living in common interest communities for the homeowners who reside in them. It will reduce housing stability and make association governance harder and more expensive. These impacts are not theoretical. They're predictable, immediate, and unavoidable with the bill in its current form. This bill does not eliminate costs. It increases them with additional hurdles, regulations, and red tape that all common interest communities will be required to comply with. Throughout this bill, the legislature imposes fee caps, contract restrictions, and procedural mandates without eliminating the underlying work that still must be done by these homeowner associations. The homeowner association and its volunteer board of directors are still legally obligated to collect unpaid assessments, to retain legal counsel to comply with statutory duties, and to contract for management, maintenance, and emergency services. When the bill increased these costs, the cost does not disappear or get paid by some third party. It is absorbed by the association and passed through as higher monthly assessments to all owners, including seniors on fixed incomes and first-time homeowners the bill purports to protect. The bill's dispute resolution procedure is an example of well-intended but practically infeasible policymaking. Forcing administrative hurdles and burdens will increase governance difficulty and make it more expensive for an association to comply with its governing documents. This is not speculation. We've seen this effect in other regulated markets. Associations will pay more for management, maintenance, and professional services, or they will struggle to obtain them at all. This bill layers in new procedural requirements, bid mandates, meeting rules, enforcement restrictions, and dispute resolution obligations. Each one requires boards to spend more, not less time, with its legal counsel. Volunteer board members do not have in-house legal departments, nor unlimited budgets. When statutes become internally inconsistent or operationally ambiguous, boards do the only responsible thing. They call lawyers like myself or like Mr. Greenstein's firm. The bill therefore guarantees higher legal costs, even as it attempts to cap recovery of those same costs. Again, these expenses will be borne by the entire community, with the net result being higher assessments in weaker communities. In total, this bill will increase monthly assessments, reduce financial flexibility, impair cash flow, discourage qualified volunteers from board service, and push marginal associations towards financial distress. For some communities, particularly older buildings with rising insurance and repair costs, this bill meaningfully increases the risk of a large, unexpected, unbudgeted special assessment or insolvency.
And Mr. Jacobson, you're at 3 minutes, so if you could please wrap up your
Thank you.
testimony.
I support modernizing the Minnesota Common Interest Community Statutes. Many stakeholders do, but this bill is not ready. It regulates outcomes without understanding operations, it caps costs without reducing obligation, and it substitutes rigid mandates for the judgment of elected volunteer board members and market realities. Thank you.
Thank you very much, appreciate it. Brock Cohen, followed by Regina Gonzalez. Welcome to the committee. If you could please state your name for the record and proceed.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and members of the committee. My name is Brock Cohen, and I'm before you today as the president of the Minnesota Community Association Advocacy, the MCAA. Our organization represents a majority of the property management firms representing the HOAs in Minnesota. Many of them small Minnesota-based businesses that work directly with homeowners and condominiums across the state. I want to begin by thanking Representative Bonner and other authors for their work on this bill and for their willingness to engage with the stakeholders, including the MCAA. We appreciate the dialogue and sharing the same fundamental goal in protecting Minnesota residents and ensuring our communities are well-run, transparent, and accountable. However, in its current form, 1750 will significantly increase the cost for homeowners and residents living in CICs across the state. This large piece of legislation will almost certainly result in increased costs for the very people the bill is intended to protect, the more than 25% of the Minnesotans that live in HOAs across the state. As drafted, the bill restricts certain contract renewals unless agreements allow for termination at any time with as little as 90 days' notice. In our business and other service-related businesses like it, renewing contracts that are restricted ultimately increases costs to the consumer. This is because we need stability in pricing to make sure that we protect the integrity of our operations. Again, we want to avoid this because we believe it'll raise prices for the end consumer and uncertainty, and then it may also eliminate the ability for people to bid entirely. Associations, as mentioned earlier, do not absorb costs. They pass them on to their homeowners and residents. When fewer bids are received, prices go up overall. This bill also imposes extensive procurement mandates, bid requirements, and operational restrictions on associations' boards. While well-intentioned, these requirements will drive up those costs, as mentioned, by delaying projects, creating an administrative burden for volunteer members of those boards, and ultimately limiting overall cost-effective service agreements that exist today. Importantly, Minnesota community associations are governed by volunteer boards, neighbors serving neighbors. These boards already operate with fiduciary duties and responsibilities inside of statutory requirements that exist. Layering a broad one-size-fits-all mandate onto every association, regardless of its size or complexity, will slow decision-making and make it harder for these operations to continue to respond quickly to maintenance issues and emergencies. We want to be clear, we support consumer protections, transparency, and responsible governance. Many of the concepts in this bill reflect best practices already followed by a well-run association. Our concern is that without further refinement, the bill reduces flexibility and places rigidity in ways that will increase the costs for the very consumers that it seeks to protect. We are committed to continuing to work with the authors to refine this legislation so it achieves its goals without unintentionally driving up costs for Minnesota families. Without those changes, 1750 risks creating higher assessments for homeowners, fewer vendor options in those communities, and long-term affordability challenges for the 1.5 million people that live inside of HOAs. Thank you very much for your consideration.
Thank you. And next up, we have Regina Gonzalez, followed by Linda Digbaum? Okay, Linda, if you want to come up now. Welcome to the committee. If you could state your name for the record and proceed with your testimony.
Good morning. My name is Linda Dingbaum, and I am here to represent a board member's point of view, someone that's in the trenches. I've lived at my townhome association, Lomans Amherst, for about 34 years. I've been active in the management and on the board for most of that time. When I first got on the board, we couldn't pay our bills. We had to have a special assessment, and it was very painful. We did some analysis and determined that less than half of our homeowners paid by the 15th of the month, and dues were due on the 1st. The tools that we used to get back on our feet, where we are today, much better, we are financially stable, are being kind of eliminated in this bill. Mandating a specific charge for late fees for every HOA is is very difficult. It's going to cause a lot of problems, and it's going to make it more difficult for us to collect our dues. The only income HOAs have is homeowner dues. And the HOA is not this big, bad corporation. We're simply a group of neighbors. We're a pass-through. We pay expenses for our homeowners. And, you know, some of it's already really difficult to get board members. It's volunteer, it's thankless, and you lose your ability to enjoy the amenities. We have a pool. I haven't been able to use it nearly the entire time that I've been there because homeowners are kind of abusive to board members. Not kind of, they are abusive to board members. It concerns me that all the legislation is down to the minute detail, where it just needs to be a little broader to allow HOAs to function, allow people to serve on the board, and be able to get board members. It is so difficult. I'm very concerned about being able to get board members and what happens to HOAs when you can no longer get qualified board members. That's very concerning to me. Just from the point of view of someone that has served and lived in an association, a big one, we have relatively large, 276 homeowners. We need the ability to get our homeowners to comply with the rules that they agreed to when they bought their homes, the rules that protect everybody. We have very few people that don't follow the rules, but the ones that don't follow the rules create problems for everyone. So I don't know where I am on time, but I just wanted to say the bill would be more appropriate if it was a little broader and didn't legislate specific dollar amounts. And keep in mind, HOA are governed by volunteer homeowners. Adding additional workload to those volunteers when they already have jobs and they already work a lot of volunteer hours for the board just makes it a lot harder to get qualified board members. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much. All right, Regina Gonzalez, then followed by Bridget Blunt. Oh, I'm sorry, yeah, that's the right order. Welcome to the committee. If you'd like to just state your name for the record and proceed with your testimony, please.
Regina Gonzalez.
Welcome.
So, honorable chair and members, my name is Regina Gonzalez. I am a homeowner and a mother of a 7-year-old boy, and it is my family and families across Minnesota that I testify for. On March 14th of 2025, I noticed that my drip edge and fascia were loose and hanging off the exterior of my home. I immediately notified my property manager, noting rain in the forecast, and submitted a maintenance request. Unfortunately, it took them 12 days to make any repairs. In those 12 days, my drip edge and fascia were exposed to rain multiple times. In April of 2025, we started noticing a musty smell coming from my son's bedroom. On June 23rd, we discovered mold growth in the wall cavity insulation and sheeting board. Third parties' inspections indicated that this was caused by an exterior issue. While trying to work with my property management company, they directly shifted the blame onto my windows and dismissed the fact that it took them 12 days to repair any damages. I had another engineer assess my home, and he reported that this was caused by lack of maintenance, exterior maintenance, all which fall under the HOA's responsibilities. Despite these findings, my property management and HOA have refused to acknowledge the results of the inspections and still claim it is my window. In their response, they reserve the right to assess all damages back to our unit and insist that I cease all communication with my HOA board and neighbors. My family and I have been displaced from our home for 8 months now due to mold. We are still paying mortgage, insurance, and HOA fees and utilities. My lawyer has been trying to help us, but without the Attorney General's office and Ombudsman's office, we are unable to hold them accountable. So I am here asking honorable members of the House to be my family's voice and take action so that this nightmare we are living today does not happen to any other family.
Thank you very much. Sorry for all that. Next up, we have Bridget Blunt, followed by Jolene Johnson.
Morning.
Welcome to the committee. Just state your name for the record and proceed with your testimony, please.
Okay, my name is Bridget Blount. Good morning, all. My name is Bridget Blount. I bought into a HOA community in June of '24. With it being a new construction, vendors had already been selected. In April of 2025, our board of directors was chosen and I was voted president. With excitement and a great vision for our community, we, the board of directors, hit the ground running. With all the ups and downs, I could share a lot of them. Today, I will focus on management. It has been a nightmare, frustrating and exhausting, to say the least. Our board has been lied to, lied on, gaslit, and at times just straight out ignored. Our management company sided with vendors when they were wrong and stood in the way of direct contact with us being able to directly talk to the services or the vendors. We were charged for services that never took place and for units we weren't responsible for. Our management company did not want us securing our own vendors. We have since gotten rid of their landscapers, their irrigation services, their decking, and other vendors that was left behind by the builder, including the management company as of March 1st. We have partnered with an amazing, so far, management company. Just as we have done with other vendors we have since partnered with. We sit down, we have conversation, we were heard, we were understood, and assured services will be on the up and up. I come before you today asking, pleading, amongst many things that needs attention. We homeowners, board members, that could really use laws that will protect us from predatory management companies. That's been my experience. These companies know we have to pay them or there would be consequences to us. As community members, not paying our association fees. My question is, are there consequences for mediocre performances, shoddy services, pushy tactics to hire their company for maintenance issues, overpriced maintenance, subcontractors, and questionable contracts, just to name a few? It is long overdue that laws reflect and protect HOAs and the homeowners from whom live in them. Luckily, I am part of an amazing family, Habitat for Humanity. I was able to draw from references and resources provided me at the time of and after the purchase of my home. I was able to call on Tim Braun from the CAI, the Community Association Institute. I was able to call on Jenny and her team that has been a constant pillar of my journey in the world of HOA. Reform is necessary, reform is needed. I like to piggyback off Ms. Gonzalez's story. My unit, 112 units I'm responsible for in my association. My unit was suffering from black mold. I walked in, I could tell that my frame in my garage was bowing. took pictures, sent it over. They said, yeah, we'll have somebody come over and just screw it up higher. I walked through the community and I noticed that other ones were bowing, and I'm taking pictures. I'm like, no, this is systemic. This is not just a one-off. I called them. Of course, they gave me the call your HOA and have HOA take care of it. They were still in our community building. Oh, absolutely not. Our HOA is not responsible for this. This is a builder's issue. They ignored me. They want to push me to the side. I went to the city. I got the city involved. They had to come out, replace my entire garage frame, and went in 3 layers to remove all the black mold and treat it. I have since had them come back out and go through every unit, including the ones that hadn't been built. They're done now, excuse me. They're done now, but the ones that hadn't been built, they replaced the flashing on all of the units because I kept telling them, there is no flashing. I have videotape. Guys, we have to do better.
Thank you.
If we are going to give our monies, we want to have services that represent us. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Next up, Jolene Johnson, followed by Matt McNeil, and then if there's any members of the public, please let our pages know. Welcome to the committee. If you could just state your name for the record and proceed with your testimony.
Yes, my name is Jolene Johnson, and my husband, Zach Armstrong, and I have lived in Heritage Park neighborhood of North Minneapolis for 18 years. I'm here today to express my full support as SF 1750. Our neighborhood is racially and economically diverse, with many homes purchased through Habitat for Humanity or city programs for income-qualified buyers, just as ours was. However, because of a city mandate stemming from the Holman Decree, our single-family homes were forced into a master HOA. I want to be clear, this HOA is not responsible for any common elements and provides 0 services. Its sole purpose has become collecting dues and finding members. We have paid nearly $5,000 in dues to this HOA since we moved in and have received no benefits other than occasional national night out parties. In 2020, we received a violation letter over a garden that had been placed for 10 years with very few changes. When we began attending board meetings to address this, we uncovered something deeply disturbing. The HOA was talking about initiating foreclosures on 10 homes out of nearly 100 homes in our HOA. The HOA refused to disclose this information to us, even after multiple requests. We had to comb through the Hennepin County property records house by house to find foreclosure filings. Neighbors were put in foreclosure proceedings over late fines and dues of under $500, including for issues as minor as leaving garbage cans out too long. In the end, 10 homeowners, all Black, were put into foreclosure proceedings. 2 homes made it as far as the sheriff's sale. Well, through to the tireless work of lawyers and nonprofits, nobody lost their homes. Many families endured incredibly stressful situations, all over an HOA that provides no services. We organized and fought these discriminatory foreclosures and filed an attorney general complaint. In retaliation, the management company stated that any further questions would be routed through their lawyer and billed to us. They ultimately charged us nearly $4,000 for simply asking questions and fighting for our neighbors. We were billed for the time spent responding to resident petitions and even newspaper articles written about our situation. The HOA aggressively billed other residents for legal fees too. Some were even charged just for requesting itemized receipts. Crucially, our data collection showed that non-white residents were forced to pay different legal fees than white residents. If this were a public government organization, clear rules would bar this discrimination and provide avenues for recourse. Because the current HOA laws benefit management companies at the expense of residents, addressing these abuses was incredibly challenging. Through a pro bono lawyer, we eventually reached a settlement with the Minnesota Department of Human Rights, which include the repayment of legal fees and monitoring to prevent further discrimination. However, MDHI did not have the authority to dissolve our unnecessary HOA. In fact, there was no feasible way for anyone to dissolve our HOA under current state laws. Our current board unanimously wants to dissolve. Under current law, doing so requires the approval of 80% of homeowners and 80% of mortgage holders. While we have the support of 95% of our homeowners, we are trapped by an impossible hurdle of getting dozens of financial institutions to sign off. Meanwhile, due to the insurance claims for this ordeal, our board insurance skyrocketed from $2,000 to over $9,000 a year, significantly increasing our yearly dues. We are trapped in an organization providing 0 benefits. Without this bill, we will be forced to further raise dues on low and moderate income families just to cover the cost of existing and go back down the road of foreclosure proceedings. It is sickening to imagine taking a neighbor's home just to maintain a state mandated HOA that provides no value to its residents that everyone agrees should not exist. This bill protects homeowners. This bill provides critical common sense solutions to the nightmare that we've lived through. It allows for the dissolution of single-family HOAs with no common elements by 67% vote of owners. This removes the impossible bank approval mandate. While our type of HOA is not common, this reform is critical. It also provides an avenue for single-family HOAs to move toward dissolution by removing common elements they no longer want to maintain. It requires free notice before an HOA can refer a homeowner's question to legal counsel. This prevents the excessive bills that we receive. It is also vital the provisions that force transparency and limit massive legal fees for issues that can be resolved without lawyers. It bars foreclosure for minor fines and for past due bills that are relatively small and recent. It prevents municipalities from forcing the creation of unnecessary HOAs. Cities should not be allowed to offload governance and typical city services to unaccountable HOA boards, especially when future residents have virtually no recourse to dissolve an HOA that isn't accountable to them. In conclusion, HOAs have shown to increase the cost of homeownership and exacerbate segregation by income and race. This bill makes critical changes to prevent the worst abuses while still allowing well-run, transparent HOAs a way forward. Nobody should be forced to endure what my neighbors and I faced. I urge you to support or to vote yes on this bill and to make Minnesota a leader in protecting homeowner rights over management company and lawyer profits. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next up, Matt McNeil, followed by Keenan Ravity. Thank you. Welcome to the committee. Please state your name for the record and proceed with your testimony.
Good morning. Thank you. Co-Chair Cagle and members of the committee, I appreciate your time to testify, and many of you, I appreciate the time you've offered over the course of the interim to talk about this important piece of legislation. My name is Matt McNeil. I represent Cities Management. Cities Management is one of 4 associate companies in market. We have 4 offices here with more than 150 employees. We serve more than 500 communities and 45,000 homeowners across the state of Minnesota. We've served Minnesota for more than 4 decades, and we're one of the nation's largest association management companies. I'm here today in opposition to 1750, but I do want to be clear, we support reform in this space. Improving transparency and disclosure and due process for homeowners is a valid and important goal, one we share. Our concerns is not with the intent, but with the practical impact on homeowners. I myself am a homeowner in a CIC and am troubled by the legislation. Senate File 1750 as currently drafted will increase costs for homeowners who are already under financial stress. Expanded procedural requirements necessitate additional legal review and ongoing professional services. Expanded procedural requirements will necessitate additional legal review, New notice and voting approval thresholds will require greater administration coordination and outside counsel. Compliance obligations will trigger governing document updates, carrying substantial legal and recording costs. And broader litigation exposure likely to raise insurance premiums, including directors and officers coverage for volunteer board members serving their neighbors. What I continue to also find troubling is a lot of circular logic. For example, with relationship to special assessments, when the association is considering the process of a special assessment, they would duly call a meeting of the members to vote on said assessment. This offering owners the democratic process. The statute as written allows one owner to then attend that meeting, participate in that governance, but then to contest that and continue to contest that ongoing. Think of things that are, important for the association: insurance or roof replacement, mandated structural repairs, or necessary reserve contributions. The financial consequence that these delays will cause is directly on all of the homeowners. The democratic process embedded in that legal framework is not without merit. It reflects what we as owners agreed to when we took title to the property, like so many other changes proposed here. But the most recent draft goes further, allowing an individual owner to independently contest and even have full opportunity to participate in the process. We also note the contracting provisions still do not adequately address insurance claims, an area that generated significant feedback during the working group process. The existing statutory consumer protections are more than adequate, and this unique procedural needs of claims handling for multi-unit commercial assets deserve restraint. Minnesota's common interest communities are extraordinarily diverse, from small seasonal cabins to volunteer-run rural townhomes, master plan communities, and large urban high-rises. Senate File 1750 applies a single framework to all of them. What's administratively manageable for a professionally staffed downtown condominium may be operationally and financially impossible for a 20-unit rural association governed entirely by volunteers. We have continued to engage in good faith through the process and remain committed to that collaboration. We want to be part of a solution, but in its current form, Senate File 1750 does not yet reflect the diversity, complexity, or the financial realities of the community and homeowners it intends to serve, and we are unable to support it at this time. We look forward to continued dialogue and stand ready to work alongside stakeholders as this committee toward legislation that generally protects homeowners with replacing undue burden on the communities they call home. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And then last on our list is Keenan Ravity. Welcome to the committee. Please state your name for the record and proceed with your testimony.
Good morning, Madam Chair and members of the committee. My name is Keenan Rafferty, and I chair government affairs for the Minnesota Mortgage Association. Here to testify on SF 1750 as amended, and also to briefly explain the intersection of mortgage banking, mortgage lending, and homeowners association. Mortgage lenders take a secured interest in a property. They use it as collateral for mortgage loans, and as such, we have a vested interest in not only the health of the borrower, the homeowner, the consumer, but also in the homeowners association. While typically our industry is relatively silent on regulating other industries, given our formal interest in the matter, we were offered the opportunity and took advantage of providing some modest feedback, both through the working groups and legislative commissions as they existed, and also the legislative process. And that now appears in the amended form that you see before you. This has really been a collaborative effort. Some of the stakeholders who are here today may have asked if mortgage lending and mortgage banking would be in favor of this legislation. And I have to formally report that our concerns in the bill have been heard and incorporated into the amended version that you have before you. In short, we are comfortable with the reasonable, common sense approach that this addresses some of the concerns that the legislative working group uncovered without over-regulating. I thank you for your understanding in this matter. I wish you best with your work, and thank you for your service to Minnesota.
Thank you very much. And is there any other members of the public wishing to testify? Okay, no, good. All right, we will move to member discussion. Representative Dotseth. And if do you want to come up and, Mr. Elwood, if you'd like to come up for any technical assistance we may need, I'd appreciate that. Representative Dotseth.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The author or the sponsor of the bill today. Question I've got is, I guess more of a comment, is I think we all realize that there's some corrections that need to be made. But I think we have to be careful on realizing that one size doesn't fit all. And maybe look at the opportunity. Has anyone approached the opportunity, maybe looking at a mediation process to facilitate some of these issues? But the question I have, maybe Ron can answer, Mr. Elwood could answer this question. My understanding, a lot of these individuals, when they purchase their property, they've got, 10 days right of review of those documents? Can you confirm if that is correct, Ron?
Mr. Elwood?
Madam Chair and Representative Dotseth, yes, they have a period of time to review and either approve or reject the purchase.
Representative Dotseth?
Just a follow-up question on that would be, is the concern I've got is some of these individuals may acquire these properties due to some of those guidelines that are in those documents. They may be investing in the community to make sure that there are some guardrails to protect their financial interest. Could we look at some potential litigation in the future due to changing some of these bylaws or putting some of these corrections that they did not originally purchase when they acquired the property?
Mr. Elwood?
Madam Chair and Representative Dotseth, Chapter 515 has been amended 18 times since 1993. And so some of those amendments are prospective and others are retroactive. And so your question is the same question that prior legislatures have faced. And it's exactly the same thing. If I purchased today and the legislature changed the statute. In fact, one of the provisions in Chapter 515 actually contemplates future changes to the statute. So you know, the law is the law, and you have the right to change it, and you have the right. There's been some issues around retroactive lawmaking that's been raised, and as I mentioned, the legislature has done that in the past, and it can do it again. It's your prerogative to do that, to change the law to protect folks. And I would also just mention that, you know, you have 10 days to review some extraordinarily complex and legalese kind of documents. It's a tremendous amount of paper. And, you know, if you've ever bought a house, I wonder how many folks in this room have actually read all the documents that you signed when you bought that house and understood. Apparently, one legislator has done that. I can see raising his hand. But this is the same thing. I mean, I think most people, you know, assume that, well, I want to buy the unit and this is it. And you know, is it an excuse that they don't read it and understand it and go to a lawyer? No. But is that the reality of life? Yes, it is. And so that's why I think it's critically important to create some basic ground rules to protect folks. And I would just, well, I'll stop there.
Thank you. Any follow-up? All right, next on the list is Representative Van Binsbergen.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I guess I have more of a comment as well. You know, I'm trying to, there's a lot of things in this bill that I really question. I'm trying to understand how new laws, new regulations are going to control cost. I've been in this space as a business owner. I own a management company, and we've managed properties like this. And my experience tells me that you know, we work with the homeowners. We are a team with them. And it's been my experience, if Mr. and Mrs. Homeowner on a board don't like my service, they fire me. They get rid of me. And I think our laws still allow that. So I think adding this, you know, is just, you know, it's obviously an extra law, extra rules that we don't need, that volunteer boards are going to have even a harder challenge understanding. As I have sat with homeowners, the biggest piece that they look to do at every month and every year is to control their costs. And you know, this is only going to, as we've been hearing from testifier after testifier, this is only going to increase costs to these boards that are, several of these organizations are just surviving now. And, you know, and I question, one of the testifiers said that 75% of the homeowner associations are run by management companies. No, they're ran by local boards, homeowners that have ran for these spots and been elected. They aren't ran by management companies. They work with management companies. So, thank you.
Representative Rauer.
Yes, thank you so much for your comments. I did get the opportunity to hear this bill in the housing last year. And what it really does is add a layer of transparency and accountability. Now, I'm sure that your board is run well and making the right decisions. Unfortunately, we heard a lot of very specific examples about bad actor boards, and that's what this is about, is holding those accountable. I would ask you to also touch base with Representative Meckland, who gave some very specific stories. If I remember correctly, which I may not because it was a year ago, there was a very specific example of a board choosing to replace septic, and it was going to cost the homeowners $20,000 apiece, and they were only giving them a few months to pay that bill. So sometimes decisions can be made that are irresponsible and unaccountable, and there needs to be a path for resolution for that. I don't know if you want to add to that.
Mr. Elwood?
Madam Chair and members, a couple of things. First of all, in terms of the comment that, you know, if you don't like somebody, we can fire them. Well, under the current law, actually you can't if the declarant has created a contract that requires the board that is not yet elected to continue that management company in perpetuity. The section of the bill would actually give the elected boards the right to fire that management company if they don't like them and get a new one. So, so actually, that does allow you to fire somebody if you don't like them, which you can't do now. The other thing I'd say is in terms of, you know, we keep hearing this thing's going to increase costs. Well, you know, part of this bill is intended to reduce costs to homeowners. For example, you know, competitive bidding process is one that actually is a critically important piece of this bill, which is in other states' laws as well. You've heard there have been many news stories about excessive costs and self-dealing and unnecessary repairs, roof repairs, hail damage, things such as the like. And this would require bids, but only on amounts work, construction work, repair work of over $50,000. So it gives the board, I mean, I think that's a perfect example of a balanced provision in this bill because it provides a lot of flexibility for the board to provide, to do the work that they need to do. But when it's a big job, they have to get a bid. And the last thing I'd say is that many of the provisions that are in this bill are in place in other states across the nation. And the homeowners associations have not gone under. There's plenty of in fact, they're in states with far more homeowners associations than are here in Minnesota. So the world is not going to collapse when this bill passes. Homeowners will be better protected.
Okay, any follow-up? All right, we will move on to Representative Allen then.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I guess this is a question to the author. The House version we have here is different than the Senate version, especially with the addition of the DE9 amendment. I'm just kind of wondering exactly what are you expecting the Senate to? Are you expecting the Senate to concur on this and possibly take this to a conference committee just because of the major difference between the two bills, or what's your expectations?
Mr. Elwood.
Madam Chair and Representative Allen, I think it's the I know it's the author's hope that the stakeholders and the folks who came here to testify with concerns today will, in good faith, come to the table and settle on reasonable reforms. This DE9 reflects a tremendous number of concerns and issues that have been raised between the time this bill was introduced and today. In fact, the Senate version went through 4 iterations, changing every time to listen to people's concerns. So I am of the understanding that if we can get a bill out of the House that works, the Senate will concur.
Thank you, and I think being part of this conversation for a while, the author of the bill has a spreadsheet with every single change that has been incorporated and which stakeholder that suggestion came from. And so there's been some very due diligence done on this bill. Representative Allen, did you have any follow-up on that one?
No, thank you.
Thank you. Representative Katiza Watun.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and to all the testifiers who came in to share their stories and their thoughts today. I just want to express my appreciation. Mr. Elwood just kind of got to the point of the bill that I wanted to highlight in discussions, because I've got a lot of concerns that there aren't any anti-kickback provisions in statute up to this moment in time. That's ludicrous. It's insane that an elected body of neighbors then, would reach out to an operations management company for their assistance, for their expertise, and then that management company could require them to utilize their preferred vendors without any sort of competitive bid process, without, anything. There's nothing in state statute up to this point that requires competitive bidding, and that is flabbergasting to me. So for that only, I would support the DE and urge other members to support. But I think also the section about the board meetings and how there's no, up to this point, again, no regulation that the board must make the meeting agenda, contracts, and documents that the board intends to approve or disapprove at the board meeting. This is line 24.26, that section, members. Available to unit owners in any reasonable manner, including but not limited to electronic mailing or posting on the association's website. How are people supposed to know what the board is considering if there is nothing posted? How are they supposed to know that they need to rearrange their childcare schedule so that they can attend this meeting and speak to or against the provision that the board is considering approving or disproving at a board meeting if these things are not publicly available to the residents of these communities? This is long past due. And I appreciate the bipartisanship, all of the folks who have come to testify at the numerous task force meetings, all the work that has been done up to this point. And I really think that we need to move forward on updating our state statute to protect homeowners who reside in these types of communities. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative West.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My co-chair over there stole a lot of my thunder. I think this bill is a little too broad, as you see by the level of controversy to pass in such a narrowly divided body. The provisions mentioned by Chair Katiz-Watun, I am very supportive of as well, and I think it would be, the best path for the bill would be limiting itself more to provisions like those. I'm a co-author on the bill to demonstrate that, oh my goodness, this needs to be addressed. The fee areas of the bill, the fee caps and those kind of things, will inevitably raise costs for all homeowners because any loss of revenue is going to be distributed across all the other homeowners. And as somebody who used to live in an association, I would much rather have the people violating the terms of the agreement bear the costs of violating the agreement rather than myself, as I have yet to be fined by my homeowners association. And just my experience on this has been the management company of the association I used to live in, when we had the great hailstorm of 2017, required the association I live in to use the vendor they own to repair our roofs. We pushed back and said we'd like to solicit bids from others. They said, well, if you solicit bids, we're going to charge a fee on any other contractor you go with unless you go with the contractor that we own. And the fact that practices like those are happening in these situations where homeowners are now captive is something that needs to be addressed. Absolutely. That was a gigantic fight. My association did lawyer up and fight it, and we had to bear those costs. And eventually, they relented and didn't charge the fee, but we basically paid the fee in attorney's fees to make that happen. So on those provisions, I think if we're going to get something passed this year, let's narrow it to these provisions. The fine capping and issues like that, I don't see how that's not going to raise costs because, as it was earlier mentioned, these are pass-through organizations. They pass the costs right on. So if there is money not coming in, they're going to have to find it somewhere. However, the bad practices of bad actors, I do think we should be addressing as the legislature. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Representative West. And I do want to point out on, and there might be a typo in this line, but 19.1 through 19.3, it says, or it should say, that it did not exceed, and I thought the agreed upon language was 25 or 5% of the amount owed. And so, and it's the greater of those two, so it's not necessarily putting a cap on it, because it is a percentage of that. But I do understand that there are some cash flow, questions, and want to make sure that that the cash flow is there for the homeowners associations. And so that was one of the things that I know the stakeholders worked on, and so we'll have to make some changes on that language, because I believe the intent was or, not of. And just a reminder too, we are laying this bill over so that we can maybe work to address some of these issues as well. And so we'd also like to get to some of the other bills today. So I have a couple more folks on the list. Representative Heinzman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I know we're low on time, so I'm just going to ask that Mr. Joel Carlson could come back up. I had a question.
Come on up, please.
As you're making your way, Mr. Carlson, I'll just start. There was some testimony that was talking about legal aid, addressing those who may be able to access legal aid. If you could just clarify or give another perspective on that particular issue, that'd be great.
Mr. Carlson?
Thank you, Madam Chair and Representative Heitzman. Love my friends at Legal Aid. We may have different perspectives on some of the questions that have come your way and don't represent all of the homeowners that maybe that we represent. And so some of the questions about reviewing documents and the 10 days and, the solutions in this bill make it more confusing for homeowners and insert the legislature into making these decisions and take them away from the local democracies that these CICs are in every single circumstance, whether it's a barndominium or a residential townhome or, a downtown condominium. This one-size-fits-all doesn't work for every single situations, and that's one of our problems. The other thing that I think the committee really needs to know is that these are not just everybody just get in a room. These nonprofit boards are governed by statute. They're governed by the Minnesota Nonprofit Corporation Act 317. They have all kinds of regulations that they follow about their meetings, about their notice. That's not being discussed here. It sounds like they just operate in a vacuum and do whatever they want. They do have rules, homeowners do have recourse, and I think we're losing a little bit of that in this conversation, that people do have the right to self-determine. They don't like their management company, fire them. Representative West, I love your story that you push back on that very onerous contract provision that at some point a board agreed to, and they maybe shouldn't have, but I'm glad they pushed back. That's a terrible idea. Why, as a homeowner, do I want to not accept bids to try and get the best price and the best product possible for the property I live in? That makes no sense that people have an incentive to increase their own costs to help a management company. So I hope we think of some of those things, that these people are just volunteers. I lived in one for a single family HOA for 30 years. I used to laugh. I'd pay more to not go to the meetings. But they're doing what they can. And there are problems, yes. Are there problems that the legislature can step in and fix in every single human interaction that you have in your residence? No, that's not going to happen. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Representative Shah. Quick question, please.
Thank you. Just a short question. Are there any educational requirements for these board members in these HOAs?
Representative Ray Rauer or Mr. Elwood?
Madam Chair and Representative Chad, no, there are no qualifications or criteria or training or education to be a board member.
Except for being a homeowner.
And-
And Mr. Carlson.
Yeah, Madam Chair and Representative Chat, that's a great question. And you should see and talk to the people that are doing board training, that are out working with the boards. That absolutely is happening, and it doesn't need a mandate of statute to take place. Do some of them maybe need more? Sure. But it absolutely happens. People are not just saying, gee, what are we going to do here? There are programs of board training. There are associations that provide the training. It absolutely goes on. It just isn't reflected in this bill.
Thank you. Any follow-up?
That's all I have. Thank you.
Please quickly, and then we're going to lay the bill over. Representative Shaw? Oh, you're done?
No, I'm good.
Okay, Representative O'Driscoll. Sorry.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And given the interest of time here, I'll just take a couple of moments. I do have firsthand experience with this professionally and have trained probably 70% of all people who have Minnesota real estate licenses in this state on this very topic. And one of the things that I want to just background for the committee is prior to June 1st of 1994, when this statute came into play, 515, to regulate common interest communities, we were governed under the Uniform Condominium Act. And if you think we have problems now, you should have seen the Uniform Condominium Act, right? That was generic across the entire country, and it wasn't doing the work that Minnesotans needed. As Mr. Elwood has pointed out, this statute has been amended several times to update and to modernize that. One of the things I think you need to keep in mind, members, as we're contemplating this, is it is not the evil board, it is not the evil property management company. We heard about neighbors. It's literally the neighbors who are on these boards. And two things that I've heard from the homeowners association that my mother lived in was, number one, please, please, please do not raise our association fees, because we're just getting by right now. We made this decision to live here because we can't physically shovel our own driveways, move our own trash cans, doing all these different kinds of things. We want this level of service from the association. And they've made a very strong and conscious decision to buy into a particular subdivision that's governed by a CIC. And what that means is they expect that the rules that are in that CIC are to abide by all and to be followed by all homeowners within that association. Not just some, not the ones who didn't read the paperwork. Under 515, there's a statutory requirement that if you're buying a common interest community property, you receive documents, bylaws, declaratory documents, as well as other financial documents about the property. Whether people choose to read those or not, or choose to read and understand those or not, is still a problem 30 years later in the industry. I'm hoping that as a part of this, and I've heard nothing about this, other than with Representative Cha just saying, hey, is there anything out there for boards to have training on here? It would be helpful in first-time homebuyer programs or other homebuyer programs where we counsel people. We spend time talking about HOAs. What are they? How do they work? Why is it important? The HOA hires the property management company because no individual has expertise, most likely, that's needed to be able to do the day-to-day operations on here. And when a vacancy comes on board, everybody locks their doors, shuts their shades, and doesn't answer mail or phone calls because here comes somebody asking me to be on the board and I want nothing to do with that. By the way, the reason why we have 82% of new developments having HOAs is because it takes the burden off of the cities, the counties, and the townships for regulation. When you put higher density in a given area, you're going to have more compatibility issues and use issues that we hope the HOA will deal with, so we don't have the police being called, music's too loud, this person's doing this person's dog is running on my property. That we internalize those things within the homeowners association for neighbors to work with neighbors to resolve issues. I will be the first to acknowledge that there are some deficiencies in the current law, but I fear that we'll be back here in a few years saying, cost of homeowners association dues have gone up. We have to put a moratorium on that. We have to put some kind of a regulation. They can't go more than 5% a year because people can't afford these and they're losing their homes through foreclosure because they're not keeping up on their agreements, right? So we have to think maybe more than twice, more than 3 times, more than 4 times, that we're doing the right thing. Small incremental steps are going to be important. And with that, I know that the next thing that we have coming up is extremely important because it's this committee which drove the issue of creating the Ombuds Office for HOAs in the Department of Commerce as an intake so we could learn more as the legislature about what are the hot button issues, and we could give conscious contemplation to those and offer solutions as we continue to move forward. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Chair O'Driscoll. And with that, I will lay over, or Representative Raywell, would you like any wrap-up comments?
Yes, thank you. It'll just be short comments. Thank you for the opportunity to present the bill on behalf of the bipartisan authors, Representative Shane Mecklin and Representative Kristen Bonner. We do want to point out in brief, it's worth noting, a quick review of the letters in opposition are based on the older version of the bill, with most of those concerns being addressed in the DE9 amendment today. The SF 1750 creates a strong framework of consumer protections for homeowners and solid guardrails to set up association boards and property managers for success. So we appreciate your support in favor of this bill. Thank you so much.
Thank you, and with that, I will lay over Senate File 1750, is that right?
Yep.
For possible inclusion.